All right, so a quadrilateral is a polygon with 4 sides, just like a triangle is a polygon with 3 sides. But then beyond that, there's different types of triangles. Well, here there's different types of quadrilaterals, okay? One of the types of quadrilaterals we're going to look at is the parallelogram. A parallelogram is a quadrilateral where both pairs of opposite sides are parallel. All right, so when we look at the opposite sides, they are parallel. And so in this particular one, when I look at this, AB is parallel to DC, and then AC is parallel to AD. So because the opposite sides are parallel, that makes this thing a parallelogram. Okay, there's a couple terms that we'll use to refer to pieces of this parallelogram. When we talk about opposite sides, we've kind of looked at that a little bit already here, just talking about the parallel sides. But opposite sides are just sides that aren't touching. So like AB and CD are opposite sides. All right. Likewise, BC and AD are opposite sides, okay? And for the definition of parallelogram, those are parallel, all right? But we're going to find out more things about those opposite sides as we start to look at some of these properties, okay? We talk about opposite angles. Again, opposite angles are angles that don't share any of their pieces. So if I were to look at something like angle A here, so angle A uses these 2 sides to create angle A. But notice, like if you look at angle B also uses this side, but then it uses this top side. Angle D also uses this side, and then it uses this other side over here. And so when you look at like angle A and B, they're not opposite angles because they share some of the same pieces, okay? The opposite angle is the angle that's at the farthest side, as far away as we can go kind of from angle A. It's angle C. Angle C, when you look at angle C, notice it uses this piece and this piece. It doesn't share any of the pieces of A. So when we talk about opposite angles, they're angles that are kind of at the far corners, okay? And we use opposite angles. We'll use those to draw things that we call diagonals when we get into this a little bit more, okay? But when we look at this, so once again, A and C would be opposite angles. So these are opposite angles. Likewise, if I look at angle B and D are opposite angles because, again, they don't share any pieces. They're at opposite ends of this thing, okay? So that's opposite angles. Consecutive angles are angles that kind of follow one another. So as I work my way around the polygon, I go from one angle to the next. Those are consecutive angles. Consecutive means one thing right after another. All right. And so when I look at consecutive angles, I would just say, hey, A, and as I draw this thing, the next angle I'll get to is B. So A and B are consecutive angles. Okay. The next one I draw would be C. So B and C are consecutive angles. The next one I draw would be D. So C and D are consecutive angles. Okay. And notice A and C are not consecutive angles because I wouldn't go right from A to C as I draw this thing. Okay. But continuing that same kind of trend here, as I draw this thing, I went from C to D, and now I go to A. So D and A are consecutive angles because as I draw this thing, I go right from one to the other. All right. And again, we'll refer to some of these things and we'll talk about the properties of some of these things moving forward. Okay. The opposite sides we already know are parallel to make a parallelogram, but there's other properties that those have. The opposite angles have special properties. The consecutive angles have special properties. Okay. So we need to be able to talk about and identify those things.